Hi everyone, Mr. Hawkins with Hawkins Tech, and the iPad Air 4th generation has been out for almost 5.5 years. And while I've done a 3 years later video on this device, we've had some updates to iPad OS that I'm going to talk about in this video, and I'm going to talk about them regarding this iPad. This is my 2020 iPad Air 4th generation. I know it does kind of look like the iPad Pro in terms of its design. Maybe not the latest and greatest iPad Pro, but it does look like the iPad Pro. Now, we've had some updates with iPad OS 26 that allows you to go into window. It's sort of a window management feature that we have with this device, and I'll mention that throughout the video. But as far as if you should buy this device, I'm going to talk about some of its specs. And this iPad has a 12 megapixel rear facing camera on the rear and a 7 megapixel camera. And here's what that is like. This is more of an updated review to the video I did in January. Here is the 12 megapixel camera on the iPad Air 4th generation. It's a great camera and it does what you need it to do. You can take a lot of pictures with it. Although it doesn't have night mode like the iPhone 12, the night sky wouldn't pick up as dark or as light as it does on the iPhone. And here is the front-facing 12 megapixel or 7 megapixel rather camera. This camera is great for FaceTime calls, if you do Zoom calls, or if you use your front-facing camera. This camera would be great for video calls. It's really nice, and overall, it's a very great camera, and it should be perfect for what you need it to do. Now, as far as how the iPad has held up, I do have it in this really nice case, which is a UAG Metropolis case. Here is a closer look at the case. It's made by UAG. It's a Metropolis case. And I've had this case for 3 years. Now, I will say the case itself has held up okay, but you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of peeling off in some spots. The harder part of the case has held up great, but the softer part is starting to peel off. That's from wear and tear and having this case for 3 years. But as far as keeping my iPad protected, it has done a great job at that, keeping the iPad truly protected. This iPad has been protected for the 3 years that I've used it. Now, as far as some of the multitasking iPad OS 26 features, well, I've showed these off in many different videos of mine, but I will show them off again here. If we take a look here, you can now open apps in Windows, and that's not the only thing. You can see you have these traffic light buttons. You have the red, yellow, and green buttons. If you've ever used or seen a Mac before, they have those traffic light buttons. And I believe it's to close and minimize and full and half screen each individual app window. That's now available on the iPad. So you can now have apps opened up in Windows on the iPad. And the best thing about it, every iPad gets it. And the iPad Air, this one here, having the A14 Bionic chip with 4 gigs of RAM, it will also get the windowing system. Every iPad is getting that feature, including the iPad 9th generation, which is the oldest supported iPad to run iPadOS 26. Now, as far as any Geekbench scores, I haven't ran any recently, but I did do an update yesterday, or 2 days ago rather, and that was iOS 18.6. But I ran these on 18.5. And you can see here we got 2094 for single core, 5108 for multi-core. And that is on my iPad Air from 2020. And I've ran a lot of Geekbench scores on this device. So, as far as if this would be a good device to replace your laptop or your MacBook, well, you would obviously need accessories for that, like a Magic Keyboard or any type of keyboard. This is not a keyboard case. This is a folio case. But you typically would need a keyboard case to completely transform your iPad into a laptop replacement. I've seen many videos on YouTube saying if your iPad can replace your MacBook. Now, without those accessories, it can't really replace your MacBook, but the fact that you can now open up apps in Windows, for me personally, that's all I've ever wanted. I've always wanted the ability to have iPad apps open up in Windows. I felt like iPadOS was too limiting in terms of window customization. And I felt like the iPad Air was capable of having that feature, as the iPad Pro from 2018, 64 gig, with 4 gigs of RAM, ended up getting Stage Manager with 4 apps opening up simultaneously, and having the display, the external display, not support that device. But the fact that it got Stage Manager with 4 apps opened up, I felt like the iPad Air was capable as well, but Apple did not give it to that device. Well, now with iPadOS 26, the iPad Air, this particular one from 2020, will get the new windowing system / Stage Manager. And when it does come out in September, I will indeed have a video on the feature showing you how to work it. I will show you how it works, how to use it. I'll make many videos to come with that update. Now, any iPad that's newer than the iPad 7th generation, unfortunately, they've dropped support for that device, but it's no surprise as it has the A10 Fusion chip. So they dropped support for the iPad 7th generation. That was the first iPad I've had. I've shown it on the channel a couple live streams ago talking about it. But that used to be my old iPad I used to have before this one. So now they supported iPads are iPad 8th generation, iPad Air 3rd generation, and iPad Mini 5th generation and later, as well as 2018, both the 11-inch and 12.9-inch iPad Pro and later. All of those iPads support iPadOS 26 with the exception of the 10.2-inch iPad 7th generation from 2019. That device is dropped. So if you have that iPad, you're going to still be on iPadOS 18 getting security updates. You won't be able to get the liquid glass and any of the other features with the new windowing and the Stage Manager-like feature in iPadOS 26 because that iPad will not support it. But I will have tons and tons of videos to come for iPadOS 26 showing off the new liquid glass and other features. And just to show you, I am not running the beta. I am on iPadOS 18.6, which is the update that I did a couple of days ago. So I'm currently running that update. But definitely iPadOS 26 will be one of the best updates to have. I'm looking forward to that new windowing system and how it runs on the iPad Air. As far as anything else regarding this device, if you should buy this iPad Air, well, honestly, I would not. If you need an iPad with more storage, I would not recommend this device in its lower storage form factor, because this one is a 64 gig model, and that's very easy to run up. Now, while I have not ran out of storage, I do edit my videos on here. My storage has tried to jump around quite a few times. If we take a look at it now, I'm currently at 24.69 gigabytes on my 2020 iPad Air. That can change around quite a bit. It's done it many times on my iPhone. It said that I was at 13 gigabytes, 15 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes. And admittingly, it's a little concerning because it will make you think you're going to run out of storage. So if you do a lot of video editing, if you do take a lot of photos and videos, I would avoid the 64 gig iPad Air. What I would go for instead is the 256 gig model. That's a far better option, and you will have a lot of storage with this device. Now, I don't remember the price of this particular device. I think it's around $300 to $400. I would have to do more research on that because I don't remember from when I did my 3 years later video back in March of this year on the 19th. As I've had this iPad for a little over 3 years now. And unfortunately, there is no way to check the battery health because it's not the newer iPads where you can check your battery health. The newer iPad Air Pro and Mini. This device was released in 2020, so you can't really check your overall battery health. But it will get iPadOS 26, and it will also get iPadOS 27. So we're guaranteed of 2 more years of iOS updates with the A14 Bionic chip with this device. As far as anything else, well, overall, this is a very good iPad, but I would recommend you get the iPad Air 5th generation with the 256 gig option. If you have all the money in the world, then I would completely recommend you go for the iPad Air M3. If you have the iPad Air from 2024, the M2 with 128 gigabytes, then I would stick with that device because there is literally no difference between the M2 and the M3. They look the same, just different specs, different chips rather. But if you don't, if you don't have the iPad Air M2, then I would recommend getting the M3 if you have all the money in the world. But if you don't, then probably the iPad Air M2 would be cheaper. Well, it could be refurbished, but I won't say it's cheaper. I would still consider the iPad Air M1. You're getting Apple Intelligence because of the M1 chip, and I would also recommend going for the 256 gig model. Despite I think that iPad has more RAM, but it still has 64 gigs. It was the 2024 iPad Air M2, which had 128 gigabytes. I would recommend that device. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Mr. Hawkins with Hawkins Tech, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.